I was stunned when my husband, Jonathan, suddenly suggested I move back to my parents' place even though they already lived with us. His words left me speechless, as if he thought this was all perfectly logical. He coldly added, "Do you have a problem with that? Don't argue. I'm fine with divorcing you if you do." His recent aloofness had been hard to ignore, and I'd been quietly weighing my own frustrations. I'd even thought about divorce myself, but the way he was pushing me out felt wrong. I couldn't help but think, am I not the one paying $3,200 for our expenses? Does he even appreciate that? As I stood there, still processing his ultimatum, his impatience flared. "Leave this house now. My parents won't feel comfortable with you here." I didn't understand why he felt so strongly, but I nodded. "Fine, I'll take all my things with me." With that, his face relaxed, and he said, "Then do it," before turning away. Right after he left, I called a local shop to arrange for selling my belongings. "My name's Betty, and I live with Jonathan, who's 3 years older than I am. We met through mutual friends, and what started as a casual meetup turned into a day we didn't want to end." Jonathan had dreams of becoming a voiceover artist, and I was charmed by his deep, smooth voice. Soothing voices had always been a weakness of mine. It turned out the attraction was mutual. We exchanged numbers and soon found ourselves constantly planning to see each other. Our relationship blossomed naturally without any formal talk about being together. I had just graduated from college when we met, and dating someone with a little more life experience was exciting. My friend Laura had concerns about our age gap, but I reassured her. I liked Jonathan, and he made me feel valued. Laura eventually came around, trusting my choice. After 2 years together, Jonathan brought up marriage. I had already talked to my parents about him, including his age, and they were excited to meet him. I often wondered when he'd propose, but it happened one evening at my place. In typical Jonathan fashion, casual and straightforward. It wasn't the most romantic setting, but that was fine by me. When he asked, I just replied, "Sure, let's get married." We were both relaxed about the whole thing, and soon after, we visited each other's families. Meeting Jonathan's family, though, was a bit unsettling. Their house was filled with lavish decor, trying too hard to project an air of old-fashioned wealth. His parents wore expensive clothing and showy jewelry, as if they were putting on a performance of affluence. It was clear our tastes didn't align, and I had doubts about whether I'd ever get along with them. Jonathan's mother even made a cutting remark about my appearance, which stung. I was surprised by the family I was about to marry into, but I reminded myself that my commitment was to Jonathan, not his family. After the wedding, Jonathan and I moved into our new condo, but something seemed to be weighing on him. One day, he asked, "Who was that woman in the blue dress at our wedding?" I was confused at first. Many guests wore blue. "Who are you talking about?" "The one who gave a speech as your best friend," he clarified. "Oh, Laura," I replied, remembering her outfit. "Yeah, that's her," he said, his tone uneasy. "Why do you ask?" I pressed, curious. "It's nothing," he brushed it off. "I just thought I saw someone like her on my way to work, and it reminded me she was your best friend." I was puzzled by his sudden interest in Laura, but before I could ask more, he chuckled and went back to his room. Shortly after that, Laura called, sounding thrilled. "Betty, guess what? My boyfriend's coming back to Canada next year." Laura and her boyfriend had been inseparable since high school. They'd known each other since childhood, and even when he moved away in middle school, they kept in touch. When he returned in high school, he confessed his feelings for her, and they became a couple. I loved hearing about her sweet, enduring love story. Despite his overseas work assignment, they had managed to keep their relationship strong. "Do you think he might propose once he's back?" Laura asked, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "And then you'll get married," I teased, grinning. Laura laughed. "Oh, Betty, you're always jumping ahead. Just make sure I get an invite to your wedding, so I can give another heartfelt speech." "Of course, after the beautiful speech you gave at my wedding, I'll expect the same at yours, just don't make it too perfect," I joked. We both laughed, sipping our tea, savoring the easy, familiar rhythm of our friendship. Laura and I had always been there for each other, a constant source of support and understanding whenever life threw us challenges. Around this time, though, I started noticing changes in Jonathan's routine. He was coming home later and later. "Working late again?" I asked one evening. "Yeah, or do you think I shouldn't work?" he replied, a hard edge to his voice. Jonathan was still chasing his dream of becoming a voiceover artist, taking part-time jobs to cover his training expenses. The problem was, all his earnings went straight to his classes, leaving me to handle our living costs on my own. Saving together was nearly impossible, and I was beginning to feel the weight of it. As the days passed, I grew more concerned. Jonathan's hours at his part-time job kept increasing, only adding to our financial strain. "Haven't you been working a bit too much?" I asked one day. They really shouldn't be pushing you to do so much overtime. I told you, I'm fine, more money is better, isn't it? Just keep your opinions to yourself, he snapped. By this point, Jonathan had grown distant. He no longer used my name, simply referring to me as you, and our conversations had lost the warmth they once had. His voice, once gentle and captivating, had taken on a rougher tone. He was drinking more, and I even noticed his voice sounded hoarse, considering voice artistry required a clear, healthy voice, yet he brushed off any attempts to talk about his health or workload, and more often than not, he seemed to avoid speaking to me altogether. Eventually, he started ignoring me, even when we were in the same room. During these tough times, Laura called. She sounded serious, saying she had something important she needed to tell me. I suggested we meet, eager to talk through my concerns. We chose a quiet cafe, and Laura picked a private booth with a clear view of the counter and staff from the door. You chose this spot on purpose? I asked, noticing her careful choice. Yes, she replied, her voice tense. I wanted to be somewhere the staff could see if anyone suspicious was outside our door. A suspicious person? Does this have to do with what you wanted to talk about? I asked, sensing something serious. Laura nodded, looking uneasy. She explained that ever since she left her job a month ago, she'd felt like someone was following her. Now, she even felt watched on her days off. She'd picked a spot with a clear view because she feared her stalker might try to eavesdrop on our conversation. Have you talked to the police? I asked, concerned. I tried, but they said without any direct contact, there's not much they can do, she sighed. What about your boyfriend? Isn't he coming back next month? I hoped she had more support. I'll talk to him too, but I wanted to come to you first, she explained. I understood her need for immediate support. Laura hadn't managed to catch a clear look at her stalker, making the whole situation more unnerving. She wasn't even sure if her stalker was a man or a woman. I decided to keep a discreet watch myself to see if I could identify who was following her. Amid my own struggles with Jonathan, I tried to be there for Laura, but soon, I made a disturbing discovery. The person stalking her was my husband, Jonathan. While he often claimed he was working late, I noticed him lurking near Laura's workplace and following her when she left. I was horrified to realize that the man terrifying my best friend was my own husband. Watching Jonathan trail Laura with a sinister grin shook me to my core. The man I thought I knew now felt like a stranger, and the love I once cherished turned cold. I knew I had to protect Laura. I urged her to move immediately for her safety. With help from her colleagues, she arranged for someone to drive her directly from the parking lot to her new place, taking every precaution to keep her safe. As Laura made her escape, Jonathan grew increasingly frustrated. One day, his bottled-up anger erupted. My parents are moving in, so you need to go back to your parents' house, he demanded abruptly. I was floored by his sudden, unreasonable request. If you have a problem with that, then I'm fine with divorcing you, he snapped. Though I had my own frustrations and had thought about divorce, it was jarring to see him so ready to push me out. I couldn't believe he thought he could just kick me out of our home, especially when I was the one paying $3,200 for our monthly expenses. I gave him a disbelieving look, but he just snapped again. Just leave already. My parents can't move in if you're still here. Why should I leave? I don't get it, I said, trying to keep calm. Fine, I'll take everything I bought with me. Jonathan looked almost pleased as I agreed, telling me to hurry. I immediately called a local buyback service, and the next day, they arrived. Jonathan watched with a smirk as I packed, but his expression changed as they assessed all our furniture and appliances. When they finished, a worker handed me a quote. Everything comes to $299,000, they said. I nodded. Great, sell it all. Jonathan's smirk vanished as he grabbed my arm. Why are you selling everything? My parents are moving in. How are they supposed to live here with no furniture? I shook off his hand. What do you mean? When we got married, you told me you were broke because you were paying for acting classes. You asked me to handle the rent, furniture, and living expenses. I didn't know you were this broke. I feel deceived. Remember that $3,200 I've been paying every month? That's yours now, and with your parents moving in, I bet it'll be even more. Jonathan went pale, realizing the weight of the situation, his confident facade crumbling as he tried to gather himself. You thought talking about money would make me back down on the divorce? Who do you think you are? Jonathan sneered. I'm already close with a wealthy lady. He struck a smug pose, as if that declaration was a triumph. I remembered how he had been following Laura around lately. If he thought that was getting close, he was delusional. Laura came from a well-off family, her grandfather a successful businessman and her father his successor, but she'd always been down to earth, never flaunting her wealth. She lived like the rest of us, never defined by her family's money. Jonathan must have somehow learned of her background and, thinking wealth made someone more desirable, Imagined he'd found a better match. The idea was infuriating, but I knew Laura would never give him a second thought. She was deeply committed to her high school sweetheart, who was due back in the States soon, with plans to marry her. When I pointed out to Jonathan that Laura felt uncomfortable because someone had been stalking her, his smug look faltered. He seemed shocked to hear that Laura found him creepy and that they were far from close. "I've always walked Laura home," he tried to justify. "You're lucky I didn't call the police," I replied sharply. "But I didn't know she had a boyfriend. He's been away, she picked me over some guy she barely knows," he insisted, completely misunderstanding their bond. "They've been in touch since childhood, writing letters and talking almost every day, and unlike you, who can't hold anything beyond a part-time job, her boyfriend is successful, even her dad likes him," I said plainly. Jonathan's expression crumbled. It was clear he'd been harboring delusions about a future with Laura, and reality was hitting hard. As the movers arrived to take away the furniture, he looked somewhat relieved, though clearly shaken. He turned to me, suddenly desperate. "I guess you're all I've got now. You'll still support my dream of becoming a voiceover artist, won't you?" I looked at him with a hard gaze. "Actually, I've already started the divorce process. From now on, we'll communicate through our lawyers," I said coolly. Jonathan, still convinced I might have some remaining feelings for him, clutched my arm. "Don't say that. Haven't we gotten along all this time?" "Gotten along? Ever since you found out my best friend Laura is wealthy, you've been distant, chasing after her from the moment we married. That was when I realized I'd made a mistake," I replied, steady but firm. Jonathan began to cry, and for a man older than me, his weeping only underscored his childishness. I couldn't bear to stay any longer. "Enough," I said sharply. "I've already told your uncle about the divorce. He expects you'll be working for him, which means I'm done supporting your voiceover dream. You barely practice as it is. Maybe it's time you faced reality, and if you go near Laura again, I will call the police." With those final words, I walked out, determined not to look back. For the time being, I would stay with my parents, though I planned to find a place closer to my work. As for Jonathan, he ended up working for his uncle, just as expected. His parents, who had initially counted on him to marry into wealth, had to move in with him, all three of them now under his uncle's thumb. I realized I had narrowly escaped a toxic family dynamic. Age wasn't the issue. My next relationship would be chosen with more caution. In a happier twist, Laura invited me to her wedding. There, I finally met her longtime boyfriend, and I genuinely wished them every happiness.